Okay, Owen, why don't we get
Yeah, you
started?
want to get the ball rolling?
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Welcome everyone to the wonderful evening of poetry organized by the incomparable Emily Greenquist, but featuring readings from Olivia Cronk, Emily herself, uh, Katrina, and Phil. We are so excited to have each of these people presenting 5 to 10 minute readings, samplings of their work from all across their oeuvres, which is going to be a very exciting time. I wanted to let everyone know of a couple of housekeeping rules. First of all, most of you are already entering into this completely muted. That is the way that we like it, and that is the way that we would like to keep it. So please remain muted throughout the thing. There is going to be a Q&A after the reading that I will moderate. I am more than happy to take questions then. If for example, you hear something very evocative in a reading that is going to spawn a question at the end that you know you want to ask, but you don't want to forget, feel free to drop that in the chat. I will be monitoring the chat throughout. So if you have any questions that you'd like to save to the Q&A, you can drop it in the general chat or you can send it to me directly. I will be watching all of that. Also, as you may have noticed, we are recording this evening for all the wonderful people that have registered and were not able to join on the day, as well as for all of you out there in cyberspace that would like to revisit the readings at your leisure. Afterwards, the recording will be emailed to you to the email that you registered. I have been told, though, fret not. You are not getting added to any kind of distro list. You are only going to be receiving communication around the recording of this particular evening. If you have a problem with the recording, please message me individually. I believe that we may be able to do something to animatize, but just send me a message and I will record that later for our post production process. So, yes, absolutely. And now, as the technical difficulties came, I will let my ambulance pass here. Excellent. Great. All right. Well, without further ado, thank you all for joining us. We want to start out with a wonderful writer, a just tremendous individual, but one that also has new work out. I want everyone to welcome to the stage our first reader, the one, the only Olivia Cronk. Olivia Cronk is the author of Gwenda and Rodney with Meekling Press, available for purchase, released on Monday. That is Tuesday, so you can get your copy hot off the presses. Woe Monster with Tarplin Sky, published in 2020. Louise and Louise and Louise, a personal favorite of mine, with Lettered Sheets Press from 2016, and Skin Horse with Action Books 2012. She lives in Chicago and teaches at Northeastern Illinois University. Welcome to the stage, Olivia Cronk.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to Emily and Owen for hosting this event. Thank you to my co-readers. How's my sound? Fine. Okay, good. So thank you to my co-readers, wonderful writers, and thank you so much to everybody who logged in for this. I see that the link I shared with people means that my my name shows up in multiple times on the screen, which is hilarious because I'm in a costume for the book. So it's a good combination. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to try to get in character. Then there was the issue of Garbin. Talk about the wolf licking the baby. Talk about explaining to your parents that they'd taken the anomaly in you as a prompt for pattern seeking, but anyway, do send a check. I was wearing a paisley dress. Garbin had a load of bets on Gorgeous George. I was wearing a black wool skirt. Garbin was at the boxing ring. I was tugging at my gold earring. Garbin paced in front of a TV. Mostly, Carla, I haven't told Rodney about these things. Mostly, I feel that the only way for me to write you letters about these things would be for me to grab you and bring you to my home and show you the way a certain jacket sleeve falls red flour over the edge of a table and pull you here to see it with the smell of Rodney's fancy soap. To pull you across the map of my home, your body a stroke of language, or I could write my letter to you on you, by way of simply shuffling you through the corridors. With each new era, there are new old eras in our nostalgia machines. The mind really chimes with this, don't you think? When he was little, I couldn't remember a damn thing. I was constantly scribbling notes in soap on our bathroom mirror. Rodney took it upon himself to do this on his own. Parapetty. Needles to lavender, we couldn't go in for nostalgia after that. I needed to water down every painting, to lump open each photograph, to haunt all of my old dances and close-ups with the new suffering I'd achieved. The thing about a kid is the thing about the man. Immediate access to wind. My Rodney is the filthiest, most brilliant, most beautiful creature to ever be. Garvin might have died a drunk man in a town he didn't own, but at least I got the kid. When he was 10, I read a novel about a woman who could use her own gaze as a way to stay high all the time. She had a method of removing all the excess from the frame. I would read while Rodney's young limbs looped over the metal bars of playgrounds. After, I'd suddenly drag Rodney home and make him pose in the gold-green wing chair. Life's elegant wind, you see, of course. Rodney watched himself in the river. I bought him a gorgeous cloak. I gave him a pile of glossy postcards. I said to him, "You just sit out in the looking. You consume the ice of memory and crouch. And you'll never be like all those other assholes." Let me tell you this small thing. My hand would never be visible in the endless gloom of Rodney. In an ideal world, my love. When he was born, I thought he looked exactly as he'd felt when he was inside of me, when he was just wild legs moving around in his sleep. Have you ever clutched your beloved just to hear the jingling of a betrayal of coins? Imagine that erased and backwards. Imagine that as a grimace on a kid. Like a tunnel that is all threat. My girlhood, my maternity, flipped and flipping. Rodney sat across the table as if he were my very own character, projected into mere air, just right there in front of me, but unharnessed for film or stage. One girl I'd known in the theater wound up as an interviewed face on an ethnographic documentary projected in cold college classrooms. I never knew if she was the grandest success or a disgusting failure, a tronie blazing in a dark room. But I sure knew what I had in Rodney. And just as the mind can fold all of ancient human suffering into frivolous details, a parapetty can roll in on its machinery to iron out the lovely skirt edges of the unknown. It's not true what they say, Rodney. You can love someone without thinking your own self is worth a thing. Come on and see the anamorphic needle here. The beads laying upon a clavicle. A nippled girl in a portrait. I was that once. I just can't explain it, Rodney, but I could turn a cigarette on and jangle my own youth inside of you. It wasn't merely a portrait I was after, of course. It was the feeling of being in a room. And then it was the feeling of being in a room with you. And as the feeling shifted, I got stuck in the overlay of the rooms, and I only wanted to stay right there, in the blended wet. And so when we got to peeling memory off, Rodney, I traced a line of columns into the fog on the window, and I watched the backyard through those bars, and I looked for you in the winter garden the way that cold weather's stiffness allows a woman to make a record of her body, and you didn't come home. and it was like a drawing of a hand that crawls to its own damn finger ring. In the home of thinking, so much time passed. I was astonished at my own capacity, even though I could not access the right form for my being. 10 years passed, 13, 5 more. The chimerical vine of all my eyes climbed up and wound around a fiery oval mirror. The limitations of the mother vessel were my closest companion. Watching the guinea pigs scurry behind the paintings I leaned against the wall, an uncontainable watery time gripping my head, a long-form panoramic view into absolute fucking nothingness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Huge round of applause for Gwenda for joining us today, for taking time out of their day for relaying the tales. And also, after the unveiling, huge round of applause for Olivia Cronk after the transformation. You can find, if you are interested to hear more tales of Gwenda and Rodney, you can find it at meatmealpress.com/Gwenda-Rodney. The link is in the chat. Please go ahead and pre-order. That is available on Tuesday. So please go ahead and grab your copy. One of the things I really love about Olivia's work, just in general, is how narrative focused it is. It's something that really strikes me about being, lesser familiar with poetry. Again, I want to specifically shout out one of my favorites, Louise and Louise and Louise. There is I think an Easter egg here. The fact that Olivia is on 3 times, I think, is also a promo for that book. So I definitely think shout outs to this one. If you were looking for more narrative poetry, I like to think of this as one long multi-chapter story. But my favorite is definitely the second chapter, which is Middle Mansion. So check out more of Olivia's work if you haven't already. Next up, I welcome to the stage another one of our favorite writers. Again, the organizer of said event. This is Emily Greenquist. Emily is the author of the ebook Disease is a Mirror, published by She Books in 2023. Her writing appears in Syracuse University's Word Gathering, a journal of disability, poetry, and literature, and Laughing Eye, Weeping Eyes, the Colorful Tears Tarot Guidebook. Emily will be presenting new and recent readings, also featured from Brooch and Peripety and or Tronies. Welcome to the stage, Emily Greenquist.
Hi, thank you for that intro. I really appreciate it. Okay, when I do view as speaker, because everybody see me? I just still see Owen. Okay. So I just want to make sure, sorry, I do want to maybe unpin you just because we're recording this and I'm going to be doing so many hand gestures. Are we able to pin me? Just want to make sure that I'm being.
Yes, I think
Maybe because I'm the host.
The recording should, I believe, I may be mistaken about this, will automatically record in speaker mode.
Okay.
So we'll always be highlighting that. You can pin yourself if you would like to focus on you, but yeah, it should be recording in speaker mode.
Okay. Like I said earlier, the technical difficulties, if they go awry, that's on me as evidence here. And the good stuff goes to Owen. So thank you for that intro. So the first piece I'm going to do was posted to Brooch, and it's This Summer Cold. I'm in a kaleidoscope of reality TV, microwaved liquids, midnight showers, thoughts of insects who could write this confusion of covers and piles of leftover tasks and eggs, but they're too busy building their own flower tunnels, their own toothy breaths, those faraway symphonies of shadow whistles. This next piece was posted to Peripety and or Tronies. It might be Peripety. I don't know the pronunciation. We're looking into it. Okay. This is Playing a Free Phone Game. I'm an inky alien, tentacles and tongues crawling and devouring humans wearing hazmat suits. This is a game that can play itself. I position my tangled protrusions in a densely populated area of an unmarked facility, and I turn my phone upside down. Unwatched humans respawn and briefly run, sucked into my mass, while my offspring cart away the extracted meats and eggs for our home sack. I let the game play while I sleep. Arsonist newlyweds revealed to be robots. Teenage hawks presenting skinned rabbits, sorority sisters covered in fleas, weeping house trains, confession mud. In the mornings, I turn my phone right side up and passively evolve more tongues, greater reach. In the evenings, just membranes. Next, I'll be reading from my evolving manuscript. Have not shared this publicly at all, so let's go to it. These pieces evolve around our Susan. So this is our Susan. From a bathroom vanity mirror, our Susan examines her thinning hairline. Each strand props up from its follicle root, exposing patches of barren scalp, then bends down like the branches of an overgrown, sickly willow tree. Susan longs to live in the forest of her own hair, a burrowed insect, parasitic aloneness in a thicket of thought and ladies. These are some of the ladies in our Susan's hair. This is Alice. Tom Thumb is Alice's cousin. He's the size of a button and nearly just as round. Alice visits Tom's parents, and they keep dropping him. Tom doesn't say anything. With a blank expression, he just bounces and lands in an L-shaped seating position. Alice is very bothered. His parents should care more for Tom to keep dropping him so, especially on this filthy hardwood floor. Alice cradles Tom in her fingers and takes him outside, showing him the beautiful trees and flowers and sky, to which Tom offers no reaction. Still, she picks up rocks and points at things, and caught in her own explanations, when Alice drops the rocks in the grass, she also drops Tom. She can't find him. He's still silent. He may still be seated. Birds circle and pluck specks from the sky. Alice shoos the birds. Her eyes dart above, below, across. The grass is so thick, it would be like a jungle to him, Alice worries. She takes 2 slow steps backwards, deciding, well, at least Tom was dropped on soft grass, and she walks away. This is Fanny. Fanny's fidgets precede her, a tangle of continuous, constant corrections. She rolls back her shoulders, backhands the bottom of her chin, finger presses her bar-soaked eyebrows. Remembers an elbow, now the other. Then, caught by another whim, she briefly frees a hand to gesture silently. Fanny wants a brush. Candace. Candace is a worm and she died 6 weeks ago. She burrowed herself between 2 fabric layers of a bathroom window curtain, got stuck in a shape like a splayed dragon. Green hearts, blue lips. Oh, such heavenly embroidery. Alice Part 2. So Tom Thumb must have mated in that jungle grass. At least Alice assumes that's his offspring that pile up and rattle at her screen door. Like their dad, they don't speak. Unlike their dad, they're in constant movement, a cluster of running, leaping, charging. They climb on top of Alice, each with their hurried assignment. Some pop into her mouth and scrape between her teeth. Others vigorously scrub behind her ears. Still more braid her eyebrows, but most pluck her nostril and mustache hairs. Suddenly finished with their hurried tasks, the charging buttons race down past her back rolls, her ink-stained fingertips, her still hairy toes, and then out the door. While this jumble brood ignored the flaws below her neck, Alice is still insulted by their spit shining. Lola. Lola is all charisma and a haircut, always a 1-2 step away from showing the girls, but still, Lola's hair is only just as long as she can bend backwards. Our Susan Part 2. At night, when our Susan sleeps, every strand of her hair escapes her body, blades that hover and stare at her. These hairs are hovering over her now, watching for signs of arousal. In the morning, they'll swiftly stab back into her, perhaps a bit askew in the haste, and sometimes a long strand may get displaced by an exhale and stick itself into her neck, only to be plucked by our Susan in front of a bathroom vanity mirror. We have lost some of our best girls this way. Thank you.
Everyone, continue to give it up for Emily Greenquist. Absolutely. I'm always so excited when not only do you get to listening to people read their work is just such a different way of experiencing something, and especially when you're hearing something for the first time, you can never your first engagement with something only lasts once. You can only ever have one first engagement with something, and it's just such a beautiful thing to hear it from the author's mouth for that, and especially new stuff that's still in development, which is always really cool. I just dropped a link to the Brooch blog. That is for those of you watching the recording that may not have the links. That is Little Edie spelled like the Grey Gardens Edie, littleedie.blogspot.com. Oh, our Susan. Let's give it up one more time for Emily Greenquist. All right. Speaking of Brooch, we have another Brooch contributor coming up to the stage. This is Katrina Underwood, who I'm having the pleasure of meeting for the first time tonight. Katrina has been featured in Trilobite, Bald Hip, Sicon Street Poets, Drunk Monkeys, and Koran Male Poetry. This year, she completed her MA thesis entitled Sit With Me, Thinking on Utopia. She lives in Chicago and works in student advising at Northeastern Illinois University. Welcome, Katrina. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for the introduction. This is so lovely. To go off what Owen said, it's so lovely to hear these words out loud, and it's been such a long time since I've had the pleasure of hearing in real time reading. So this is really delightful. So I'm going to start with some pieces from my thesis, and then like a new-ish piece. And they are not titled, they just have numbers. So this one is 25. Chinese food is sad food. Not inherently, it's my sad food. My sads aren't like they once were when I broke things. Now I do sad during appropriate allotted amounts of time like a grown-up. I have pre-scheduled breakdowns and penciled in panic attacks. No, Chinese food is not everyone's sad food. For some, it's Hot Pockets or pistachio baklava from the Greek bakery down the street. Are our bodies really even our own? Even in death, your body is getting manhandled by some stranger, filling you with chemicals, pickling you like some kind of garden cucumber so you look alive enough. Who knows what vulgarities are said behind closed doors? These are female worries. How we look even as a corpse, what burden our bodies will bestow to others, how aesthetically pleasing or hideous we will be in death. If only we were cats and could crawl off to die alone with some dignity. Instead, there has to be some kind of body parade with an ambulance, nurses, doctors, a coroner, a carnival of people who have never met you will see your meat suit and you'll have no choice. I'd rather be tossed in a Taco Bell dumpster, buried in an unmarked grave in the forest. It all seems so indecent. That's the first one. Let's see. I should have printed this out. Okay, the next one is kind of like a mashup, deconstructed, like work in progress. So it's called Number 37. I am walking to therapy in a neighborhood that feels almost too gay, where the overlapping lines of pride flags, gentrification, and creeping heteronormative beliefs are being straddled, but not in a sexy way. There's a gluten-free bakery, for Pete's sake, and it's admittedly delicious. My therapist's office is in an old building that was at one time classrooms and has since been converted into office space. Perhaps a child once learned algebra in this room. Now it is where I sit and drink coffee and complain. It's beautiful how things change, isn't it? I'm sure some child found algebra traumatic. This room was built for processing trauma in one form or another. I often wish I could sit in my therapist's office for 10 minutes or so before our session, look at the books on his shelves, become acclimated to the temperature, the lighting, and take in the curved edges of the large leafed plant from Home Depot before delving into this past week's obstructions. I enjoy the consistency of the space. It looks the same week to week. The only variable is the scent of the room, which home goods candle changes, cedar, vanilla, weathered birch. It is a comfortable space. However, there isn't a small trash can near the couch. Anytime I use a tissue, I hold onto it instead of walking across the room to throw it away. I think of mentioning this, but decide overall it is okay. I mean, like, it's not really okay. Who wants to cross the room sniffling or sobbing? No one, but I'll concede to shoving the therapy tissue into my purse, and inevitably a future self will say, "What is this?" Today I'm complaining about work, inequality, and fairness. My therapist says that it doesn't sound like you are looking for allies at work, but co-conspirators. I don't know if he means this as a compliment, but that is how I choose to take it. I think of my friend, peer, mentor, who jokingly refers to folks that we invite into the fold as secret university material. It is said jokingly and we laugh, but there's a shared undertone of hope. We create space in our offices for hot tea and processing and validating and plotting. My therapist and I have similar sense of design. We both value the art of curating a space on a budget. We even have the same couch, which has led to a somewhat strained and unrealistic set of expectations from my own couch. And then I think that one went on a little bit longer than I thought, so I'm just going to do a short piece. Let me grab that. And then this is an old piece that I just really enjoy reading out loud. This one's called Noted. I search for a pen in my bag, but all I can find is lipstick. So these words are written with my lips, not my hands. I listen to the mountain goats on Spotify as I watch a soundless how to make the perfect steak sandwich video taught by Paul. Paul is teaching me how to be perfect. I'm a vegetarian and I don't really believe in perfection. I conduct a casual survey on the street. Do you think it's strange to pour milk into the bowl before the cereal? The results are mixed. One person confesses with unnecessary passion, I hate soggy textures. Cereal should only be eaten by putting a spoonful of cereal into one's mouth and then drinking a swig of milk from a glass if one is forced to eat cereal at all. The person walks away disgruntled. I shout, noted. Another woman tells me that she wants to be buried in a pet cemetery between a golden doodle named Chomsky and a poodle named Wrath. I tell her this information is not related to the survey being conducted. Who knows who I could be buried next to in a human cemetery? I don't want to risk being buried next to some pervert. Noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up for Katrina. Katrina, literally today did I hear someone say, if you haven't tried putting the milk in before the cereal, you'll never know the light of heaven. You are on the beam. You are channeling the universe. I'm just going to be thinking about, how we can become cats and co-conspirators in our lives. I think that it's just such a beautiful image. I also want to shout out the work that, again, the link is in the chat right now. I know Katrina's work from her work on Brooch. I want to specifically shout out Summer Skin. I think that is an incredible piece. And especially now hearing some of your other work, I just love this relationship with food and the body, but not in the sense of like food as the body. This kind of idea of how we incorporate it. We are what we eat. And this interesting thing of the personification of food in your stories. They feel like characters. Yeah, give it up one more time for Katrina. We love it.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Owen.
Thank you. All right. Finally, we have come to Philip Sorenson here. Philip Sorenson is the author of 3 poetry collections: Of Embodies with Rescue Press from 2012, Solar Trauma from Rescue Press in 2018, and Work is Hard for from Schism Neurotics in 2020. Welcome to the stage, Philip. How's it going, my friend?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry. I'm last only because of the CTA. No other reason for that. Thank you so much for putting this together, Emily, Owen, for hosting. Thanks for coming out, guys. I'm going to start off with 2 brief quotations, and then I'm going to start reading from a new manuscript called Sleep, Sleep. The waking have one world in common. Sleepers, meanwhile, turn aside, each into a darkness of his own. Heraclitus, translated by Brooks Haxton. To this day, it's a mystery who gave in to temptation. It's a Viennetta ice cream commercial from 1992. Statuary, skeleton, to be overthrown by grapes and snow, anemone, lily, daffodil, mush, come down, fibers forever turning, home alive in pleasure and affirmation, apple wand, wedding mirror, to be totally naked, so nude that time stands revealed as a crown, an oversized bee, a Game Boy, a salt-cankered pole, asleep, asleep. Longing to be perfectly still with my loved ones, we are crouched in these flowers and shaded by this apple tree, forever unharmed. It is a marble figure of a man, bent in ecstasy or despair, and coiling away from us and half covered by a sheet. What are these mirrors? This cracked open marble is a crater of faces asleep, with a shape that is every other unsteady shape, made of that shape or just one shapeless shape. Distance arrives in my sunflower's face, telling us its moral lessons. They go on forever, a kind of knot or an array of mirrors asleep inside of a marble bust, a boulder-strewn moraine, autumn night. A chocolate commercial, a commercial for velvet gowns, a velvet gown and marble stairs, heavy, dreamless sleep, the quiet that is condensed inside of everything. We place a martini glass full of Viennetta onto a black and highly polished dining surface, a commercial for Breyer's Viennetta, a mystery who gave in to temptation. Dark conical pines, a woman's hand violently twists a white cloth napkin, sick with desire. A garden full of marble figures and militating life, armies of worms and flies, a dark mass, a bell, yellow eggs and seeds, aloft in May but buried by September, the lilacs relent, a creeping white powder. Massive bee, dear, please take me into you. The apples thud all night long. A musty fireplace, a musty smell. 2 tablets of melatonin, 5 milligrams, fast dissolve. The sodden books are hunched in piles, and sleep wades through the lilies and crawls along the plaster and down into an old digital alarm. 2 sleeping figures. A crumpled tube of preparation H, black stockings draining in the tub. Dreamless sleep, coiled inside a gloomy Quiznos, an odor perceived while asleep. It is a cube or sphere extruded from hell, arriving as a cloaked figure, a skyline, telephone, Georg Trakl, white sleep, this strangest of gardens, twilit trees filled with snakes, night moths, spiders, bats, Stranger asleep. Heavy perfume, July 21st, 2022, sheets of gluey light. September 10th, we smear berries on a mirror. I found webs, moldy watermelon, mud is in my hair. Wig box, darkness, spongy gold, a moth, a rigid clock. Longing itself. Asleep as shadows drift back and forth up web-covered stairs. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for giving us a little sneak peek on what you're working on. It's great. I have to tell you, there is a line in again, I want to plug one of my faves, Solar Trauma. I think is one of the my favorite poetry books. And I just wanted to read, let all of the words be the same word, drive us into the sea and transform us there. I think about that pretty frequently. So once again, everyone give it up for Phil. All right. Yes. And give another big round of applause for everyone, all of our readers today, all of our poets. We are going to transition here into our little Q&A segment. If anyone has a question, they are free to either come off mute and ask any of our readers today, or if they're feeling a little shy, you can absolutely throw it in the chat and I will be more than happy to read it out. While everyone is thinking about their questions, I can go ahead and get us started with a little conversation topic. Knowing a lot of your works and seeing some things. One thing I heard recently, this really wonderful quote, and I'm a little less familiar with poetry, which is actually, I'm very excited to see how many characters were coming out in today's readings. But I heard this quote the other day that I wanted to say. And the quote was, language is a physical act, something that involves your whole body. You write with your whole body, you read with your whole body. And I know that, so many of you have written involving things that involve the physical form, your body. I know that Solar Trauma has a lot of body horror in it. I know that Emily's book, Disease is a Mirror, grapples a lot with the physical element of being alive. I was going to ask all of you and open it up to the group here. Does that quote resonate with you, both as creators and writers? And if so, how do you kind of incorporate that kind of mentality into your work, if at all, or the way that you work?
Owen, would you mind repeating the quote?
Yes, the quote is language. Let me just remember. Really good. Language is a physical act, something that involves your whole body. We write with our body. We read with our body.
My sister recently made fun of me because I was doing a public reading and all the pictures are like this, Emily with their hands. And so she's like, we Horleby sisters always talk with our hands. So yeah, I think when I'm writing, I am also doing the exercise of reading it out loud pretty often to myself to see how it feels on the tongue and how it feels in the body. So that made me think of that.
Do you find yourself writing from the perspective of a particular sense when you write?
How do you mean?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, Katrina, you go. Yeah.
Oh, I was just because I love that quote and I love that question. And like Olivia knows a lot about my process since we've talked like a lot about my writing process. And so your question about the body, I tend to um drop myself into experiences a lot. So I can't really write stationary. I wish I could, but I tend to write based on where I am. I love eavesdropping on conversations on the bus, on the train, people watching. That all has a lot to do with my writing process. So like being physically in my body, listening to what's going on. I have a that's So yes, I would say that kind of like body and senses has a lot to do with the way that my writing routine.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I one of the reasons that this concept prompted not only just consistent themes throughout each of your works, but also in this idea of the misconception that poetry can sometimes be an intellectual exercise, and not to say it's wrong to have a poem draw you intellectually, but there is something interesting about how poets specifically relate to the physical act of their poetry. And so that's another follow up with the do you write with a particular sense was one of, I heard people, you can make up senses. There are, 6, 7, 8 senses, the sense of humor being the seventh, and I think I was wondering if there was a sense that particular guided you from process to process. It can be about the readings, the writings that you shared today, or otherwise, do you find yourself being led by one sense over another?
Since I put something in the chat, I
Oh,
can
yes.
start one strand here. I think I might, and I won't stand by any claim I ever make off the cuff, but I think I might write against the body. I think
Interesting.
that what I'm looking for from literature, whether I'm reading it or writing it, is for something narcotic and psychedelic and
Mm.
something that's fiddling with temporality. And
Hmm.
so I'm looking to be in a second space that's not a space of the body. So
Excellent.
but that said, Phil maybe was going to say something about this. He and I co-wrote something a long time ago that it's an idea we have called the Z axial. And like XY and then Z like wah 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 like shooting around. And our notion, our claim is that smell is the most Z-axial sense. It's the
Ah,
thing that most likely shoots you through temporality or pulls a bunch of temporalities together. And so even though I don't often actively think about smell when I'm writing, I think I'm trying to do something next door to smell.
yeah. That's really, really interesting. I love this idea of writing against the body, of that physically being, art is one of these vehicles that is an alchemical transformational process. So to go into like the overarching, like new sphere of reality, that's something that's interesting of like using that as transport. So that's fascinating. Did anyone else have any thoughts around that quote or the sense of their actual writing?
I see that Mark Gunter has a question for Olivia.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mark writes, I got the sense when you were reading that you were pulling me in too, not just as a listener, but as your co-conspirator. Like you as Gwenda needed me not only to hear you, but to understand you, maybe to be on your side. I'm wondering about how you imagined your audience as you were writing your book.
Thank you, Phil, for reading it. And thank you, Mark. Actually, wait, let me just I think I'll say a bunch of things that may or may not be properly synthesized. I was gonna say something about Mark, I was gonna say that Katrina's work seemed like she's making co-conspirators of the readers in her sort of like horror comedy thing that you're doing, Katrina. Because I told you that that's what I thought, like a horror comedy combination, and that requires co-conspiratorial vibes with your reader or listener. And Mark, um, I want to say something about this though, Mark, because that section about the section that's like about Carla, like Gwenda is telling Carla that she's going to write a letter on her by pushing her through the house. I wrote that in our English 416 class when we were all sitting together, and I don't know what we were working on exactly. But so I wonder, in a strange way, since we were together in that space, if you were, I mean, I don't think I shared it with the group, but like there was like something there, a familiarity there. So, but and then I don't know how I imagine the audience. To be honest, mostly I think of Phil as my audience because he's my first reader and he's a trusted reader and we have similar tastes and ideas, and so it's a way to launch. But also with the character of Gwenda, and others might be able to address this in their own writing. In many ways, I'm thinking about, because Gwenda's like a martyred mother. So it's really easy for me to dip in there if I want to. Like I can do it. So in some ways, I think it's that sensation. And I might have said this to you before, Mark, and others know this too. Um, I think a lot about the Shelley Duvall video, RIP, that was like it like went viral because Dr. Phil like interviewed her maybe without her consent. She's very mentally ill at that stage in her life and stuff, but there's like a pleading in her talking. And so maybe I was thinking a little bit about that too. But I didn't mean to hog that space. Thanks for the question, and others should jump in unless, Owen, you want me to go with something. I have
No,
questions I can throw out too.
yeah, no. I off of that, considering we had two readers that really, delved into the more performative elements of embodying their characters. When you all were writing, I guess I'll pitch this over to Emily as well. When you two were crafting something so character focused, what kind of was the impetus that when did these characters start speaking to you, and in what way did you start discovering them?
I am admittedly so early days with our Susan and our girls that like I don't know. I initially was thinking of like three characters, then I was like, no, there's more. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still in the exploratory stage and we'll be doing some more meditations to find more of these girls, but yeah, how's that for a vague answer?
That's good. That's good. Olivia, you said you had some additional questions for
Yeah,
the
this will be a
group.
good follow-up. And I wrote notes because, I went into school mode. But Emily, I'll ask you a question about the gestures. One, and it's two-parted. One, did I don't know how many people in this space know this, but Emily, was your thinking about the performance and any of the content related to your American Sign Language courses? Or do you think that you just had gestures on the mind because you had done that somewhat recently and had been thinking about the language of gesture? Because even our Susan does, like the opening thing is a gesture, right? Like the sort of examining the hairline. And so that's my question to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Olivia knows me. And when I said that I hadn't shared these pieces publicly, um, Olivia had seen them and no one else. So anyway, but and again, her knowing me, I had taken a couple ASL American Sign Language courses, and yeah, it did. There were moments where it actually did really think about it, like the gesture of like in the past, it's something like this, and anyone who knows the ASL language can just say that, oh, she's doing all that wrong. A lot of it's been a while since I was doing this, but yeah, I think it was present, and I just think it is a beautiful language, and the idea of talking with one's hands, I'm very much a fan of. So yeah, I think there was an undercurrent of there. I think also the undercurrent of someone being such a novice to that physical language, like just sort of making these other gestures or, just that things that come to mind without any sort of preciseness too. So. Yeah, Olivia, I have everyone's secrets. She does.
Are there any other questions from any of our readers and or for our readers from our audience? Going once, going twice. Going thrice. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for our little Q&A afterwards, our discussion. Once again, huge shout outs to Olivia Cronk, whose new book comes out Tuesday. That is Gwenda Ronnie. Everyone definitely check it out. And absolutely huge shout outs to Emily Greenquist for putting this together and doing their reading. Katrina Underwood for showing up and reading some amazing pieces, and same thing to Phil for sharing some wonderful new work with us. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful rest of your Word Wednesday, your Wild Word Wednesdays.
Thank you, Owen. I appreciate you hosting, and thanks everyone for coming. Yeah, thank you. And Katrina, Olivia, Phil, wonderful reading. Thank you.
Congratulations,
Thank you so much.
everyone.
Thank you so much, you guys. Thanks to everyone who came.